So let's get started. I have a set of career focused questions for you to get going. So first, Annie, could you describe your current role? What are your responsibilities? What a typical day or week looks like for you? And I see that beautiful view behind you, so maybe you can mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie. Nice to meet you all. And for those of you on Hawk Hill, I am so jealous. Hope you're taking care of it for us. Yeah, so my current role is I'm a partnerships manager at Paramount, specifically on the programmatic team in indirect sales. So I'm based here in New York, in the lovely Times Square. It's a little dreary today, but still a good view. Yeah, so I've been here for a little over 2 years. I'm in the office 2 to 3 days a week. And some of my team is based here on the East Coast and some is based on the West Coast. So it's a really interesting dynamic that I think we're now used to post-COVID. But it's a role that I've absolutely loved and definitely excited to grow in it for sure. So programmatic, for those of you that are unfamiliar, programmatic essentially means automatic buying and selling of campaigns. So using advertising technologies to buy and sell digital ads in an open marketplace auction. So within my role, I'm maintaining relationships with ad agencies across the world who connect us to advertisers that provide us campaigns to place on our sites, on our apps, as well as our CTV properties. So anything on, Pluto TV, Paramount Plus, anything streaming related. If you're watching any Paramount shows on Roku or Amazon Fire Stick, those ads are managed by us. So yeah, so my core responsibilities from a day and a day-to-day, week-to-week perspective, I check in on our daily revenue on every single day, every single morning. That's the first thing I do before I even make a coffee. That's the first thing I do. And how my partners are pacing. So whether they're pacing, behind or pacing ahead of their forecast, and make sure that my team is aware, as well as meeting with those clients on pretty much a weekly basis. I meet with most of them on a weekly basis. Some is biweekly. But make sure that everything is, working, everything's in order, there's nothing broken, and that they're on a good path in terms of making their forecast. So they provide us a forecast a month prior to that month, and it gets adjusted here and there. But we're responsible for making sure that that partner is pacing as they said they would, essentially. So yeah, and basically just like selling our content as well. So most recently, our tentpole events like the Super Bowl I worked on, the Grammys I've worked on. I've had the opportunity to work on March Madness, the MTV VMAs, and the movie awards. The NFL season as a whole is a huge one. So yeah, it's a big job, but it's a lot of fun.
That's great. And when you say like partner pacing, it's basically just making sure that their ads are reaching the right audience or your ads are reaching the right audience, I guess.
Yeah, so that their ads are reaching the right audience and bringing in the amount of money that they said they would.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So keeping tabs.
Yes. Basically, holding people accountable is a very big part of it.
Got it. And I'd imagine you have to relate or communicate with them in a way that doesn't like alienate them, but yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
yeah.
and also like letting them know, kind of making sure that they're aware of like our demographics based on the content that's being consumed. So, for NFL season, that's probably our biggest demographic as far as gender goes and as far as age range and location and all that stuff, because who doesn't love a good NFL season?
Absolutely. So Annie, what made you decide to like get into this, or how did you get into this career?
Yeah, so my career has taken me kind of all over the place, and I had the pleasure of graduating in 2019 with a pandemic following 6 months later. So that was a very interesting time to be starting a career for sure. So it really started at SiriusXM. I was an intern for them, and then I went on to be a coordinator for them, but kind of like I don't want to say part-time, but like I was filling in for this woman on maternity leave and she ended up taking longer time than she anticipated. So I ended up staying for a lot longer. which was great considering we had a pandemic. So I still had some form of income. But yeah, so I started in content partnerships at SiriusXM, where I was basically producing, working with partners and producing content for those partners, whether it was talent or brands, sponsorships, anything that needed my attention. I worked really closely with the classic rock stations at SiriusXM, so I had the chance to work on content and partner with some really significant names that I hold very close to my heart to this day. It was a great way to start my career. And it also really challenged me to get innovative and think outside the box and make sure that I wasn't, repeating content for certain audiences. That got a little challenging. But I had an amazing team over there who was really, really awesome and very like open to hearing the interns' ideas, which was not something I expected to experience at a big company like SiriusXM. Yeah, so that was great. And then unfortunately, pandemic hit. They had to let a lot of us go. I was part of that. So about 6 months later, I ended up working at BetMGM, the sports betting company, where I was producing content over there as well, producing content for partners like NBA, MLB, Pittsburgh Steelers was one of my clients over there, a variety of teams within the NFL, Arizona Cardinals was another one. Yeah, and kind of just getting the opportunity to, connect with those demographics on more of a local level, which was pretty cool. I'd never done anything like that before, so I had the chance to connect with a lot of like local brands. And if they wanted to be connected with their NFL team, we were producing content for them while also getting them interested in, placing bets on, the parlay for the Pittsburgh teams that day or something like that. So that was an exciting role. Very demanding. I was not great at, working until 2 o'clock in the morning. But it was a great opportunity that got me to Paramount eventually. So I was applying to jobs and I had applied to a bunch of jobs at Paramount. And the jobs that I had applied to weren't actually a great fit. So I was reached out to by HR here and they were like, hey, we think that you might be a really good fit for this role. And I sat down and I interviewed with my current team who I work with every single day. And they took me on, they took a chance on me. I had no programmatic experience whatsoever. But they were like, you'll be able to learn it and you'll be able to pick it up. And so I have, and here we are, almost 2.5 years later.
That's amazing. And when you say they reached out to you, did they use like a recruiter or did they know someone that you knew?
They actually just called my cell phone. Yeah, they had my cell phone number and like I think she was like a director of the advertising, HR committee or whatever. She just like called me. She was like, "Hi, I'm from Paramount." I was like, "Is this a joke?"
Yeah, I guess always check your voicemails or answer calls.
Oh yeah, answer those calls because you never know who could be on the other end of them. That's for sure.
So, my next question is like, what surprised you the most about your current job? And maybe related to that, like, do you think people have any misconceptions or do you have any misconceptions going into this that like have been corrected or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had misconceptions along the way. I'd say the one thing that still surprises me every single day is how much I'm constantly learning in my current role. The media business is enormous, and Paramount is a very small piece of that puzzle, in comparison to like the rest of the industry. So I call my particular team too, like this really awesome Venn diagram where I'm obviously like exposed to the entertainment side and the sports side and all that fun stuff. But I also work really closely with ad tech and product. So I get a really great viewpoint of like the inner workings of how, these advertisements are produced and how they're distributed amongst our content. And it's a really cool, just like, if one thing's not working, then the other's not going to work either. And so I'm constantly learning new things about, ad formats and pricing and buyer trends and how do we collect first party data and third party data without like infringing on privacy issues. It's always a really interesting, like, kind of whatever's new too. There's always something new going on. So, it's always really interesting learning the trends and, trying to understand where this industry stands today because it's constantly changing. I would say the one misconception that I wish I had gone in with a better attitude is that everybody is really looking out for each other in this industry. We are all in this together. A company, a team, everyone is a unit and we're all working towards the same thing. And I thought it was going to be a lot more cutthroat than it actually is. And it is competitive. I'm not going to, sit here and say that it's not, but it certainly is more teamwork than I was expecting. And it's way more of a teamwork feel at the end of the day. Like I am so blessed with the people that I work with. I am so lucky for the people I work with. And that is certainly a privilege. And I am so aware that that is not something that people can say every day. Yeah, so I'm very lucky.
That's awesome. And I guess kind of related to like I don't know, I guess you could say the culture or your coworkers. One question on here is what are some ways that your organization or industry demonstrates a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously we're Paramount. We're very aware that our content library is extremely diverse and the leadership team wants to make sure that that's being reflected behind the scenes too. So everybody who's putting it out there and working hard and getting all of that out there is, informed and everything. So, I would say my favorite aspect that I have participated I have two in terms of the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation. My company is amazing. They hold events that really just bring everybody together. They've gone above and beyond in producing company events and programs that celebrate the diversity of our culture and how it relates to our content. So for example, like 2 months ago, for the Bob Marley movie that came out, it was during Black History Month, and they had an amazing Black History Month celebration with a screening of that movie. So it was it was so exciting to see the movie with employees, for one thing, with people who've worked so hard on it. But to experience that all together as a company unit was so, so cool. And on more of a local level, they brought in local restaurants who serve Caribbean food, which was so cool. So I feel like we get a really good experience here in experiencing not only like the DEI conversation together, but also on a very local level, because New York City is enormous. And it was really cool to experience that on a level of like people who you are face to face with, which was really awesome. And then I would say my other favorite part is the ERGs that we have here. So the employee resource groups. Paramount is very dedicated to making those in marginalized communities feel not only welcome, but also heard. And they want to make sure that us as employees are educated on like what's going on in the world, where Paramount stands on it, and how, we can be there for our fellow employees and how we can be a voice. So one of the ones that we're currently working on is, we're developing a mental health one, which we're doing along with MTV, because MTV has a really great mental health program that they have for consumers, but there wasn't one for employees. So we're now in the process of developing a mental health employee resource group for anybody kind of dealing with that on like a regular basis. Anyone that wants to join within the Paramount sphere is more than welcome to. Yeah, so I can't disclose what we're working on exactly, but it's really exciting. I'm so pumped for it. And it should be coming sometime this year. So we've been working on it for at least a year too. So really good stuff coming.
That's really exciting. And I know a lot of students are, in touch with their mental health and just more open to talking about that. So I feel like any organization that is paying attention to that is like doing it right. Or
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so great to, feel heard too.
so this next question kind of gets to the past, or like we've touched on like what's happening now. And now I think we'll start going back like to your experiences leading up to now. So this question is simply like, how did you get your first internship or your first job?
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record because this is not gonna be the first time that I'm gonna say this. Apply. The worst that anyone can say is no, or you just get ghosted. Like you have nothing to lose, truly. So when I graduated 5 years ago, which is really weird to say out loud. I had no idea what I wanted to do after St. Joe's. I felt like all of my friends knew and all of them were getting jobs or, deciding where they were going to grad school. And I was like still figuring out what I wanted to do. So I decided to apply to companies that I was not only interested in, but like also had a passion for. So that was anything in sports and music and entertainment. That was my passion at the time. It still is. That has not changed. If anything, it's probably gotten worse. But it sounds so cliche. But I really did find like what I was passionate about while I was at St. Joe's. And I decided that that was the career path I was going to pursue, and it was the career path I was going to pursue no matter what. And I'm so glad I did, because now I have a job that doesn't really feel like work. So I get to connect with like interesting people internally and outside of my company every single day, and it's really exciting. So I definitely recommend, when you start your job search, whether it's for your first job out of college or an internship, I definitely recommend like fully going for it. Like use your connections, message people who, could be St. Joe's alum, for example, message people you may know who work at a company that you're interested in, and use those connections because you never know where they can take you. And let them know like I applied for this position. I would love to get to know more about like the company culture. I would love to get to know more about what that team or what that position entails. Definitely asking questions too is a huge part of it. I was very curious because I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time. So I was asking questions about like, what does your day-to-day look like? Like what big projects are you proud of? Questions that were, I thought provoking at the time. And eventually, like, you just never know where they can lead you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, great advice. So much that I could respond to, but maybe we'll see if people have questions about that, like how to write, how to do that messaging when you don't really know someone that well. Cause I feel like we talked about confidence in a previous session, but I feel like sometimes that's a hard like obstacle to overcome.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
though you seem super outgoing. So um so these questions kind of relate to like your student experience or like what you did as a student. So what is something that you wish someone had told you when you were in school?
Um, Number one, go outside your comfort zone for sure. Apply and interview for absolutely everything. Like I said, the worst thing that someone can tell you is no, which means it wasn't the right spot for you, which means that the right spot is still out there for you. So a door that might have closed or an opportunity that you might have missed on is not a no completely. It's just a no for that one specific thing. And that means that there's something even better out there. Um, so absolutely just like going outside of your comfort zone, not being afraid to hear the word no is also a big one. Because you are told no a lot for sure. But when you hear yes, it is the greatest feeling in the world. And so much of that comes from going outside of your comfort zone. Um, if you receive an interview request, even if it's for something that you're like not super interested in, take it anyway, because it's an opportunity to get in front of a recruiter or someone in HR. It is an opportunity regardless. And it's a chance to, speak to someone about something that you may not be interested in, but by the end of that interview, you really could be interested in it for sure. That's also happened to me. So yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think when I was also at St. Joe's, I mean, I took on a lot of internships, whether it was like paid or unpaid too. Experience is experience as at the end of the day. And though it is nice to get a paycheck when you're, 19, 20, 21 years old, experience at the end of the day is so incredibly valuable. Whether it's like at an internship, in a club, on a team, leadership experience is everything. Connecting with people who you might not be connecting with um anywhere else at St. Joe's, huge opportunity right there. My best friend from St. Joe's, she started the Hip Hop Hawks club. I don't know if it's still going on. I hope it is for her. But I barely knew this girl, and she was like, why don't you come to one of the classes? Like, it'll be a great opportunity. To this day, I went to that one class. To this day, that girl is still one of my best friends. So you connect with people in all sorts of ways. She's helped me get jobs. I've helped her get jobs. Um, and it's such a special community because St. Joe's is small enough too that you get the chance to connect with literally everyone. Um, and this is kind of the last small community where you get that chance. And especially like now I'm in New York and I'm at a company with 50,000 people. I wish I did more like networking within my St. Joe's community. So that's my last piece of advice there.
That's great. And then this is kind of related, I guess, but thinking about your industry specifically, what are there like some experiences, like 2 to 3 experiences that students should try to engage in to help them prepare for entering a field like yours?
Yeah. So my first experience at St. Joe's where I really had to start like buckling down and thinking about my career was my first St. Joe's career day where I went alone, and I was so scared to go alone, but it forced me to get out of my comfort zone and talk to people. And again, this was at a time where I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I remember talking to so many different people that day and kind of getting an understanding of what an industry or what like the food industry looked like, because that's a big thing at St. Joe's, or what sports marketing looks like, or what accounting looks like. Like that's such a great opportunity to connect with people on your campus, whether it's alumni or companies that are looking for students, fresh out of college. Like it's such a good opportunity to go and just have a conversation, get your face, get your name and your resume out there. So that was my first one that I ever did. I'm based in northern New Jersey, so I'm very lucky that I was able to get to New York pretty easily when I was home. But I went to a variety of like networking events as well, whether it was sports or entertainment. So I went to quite a few sports marketing career fairs where I got to connect with like leagues and teams and people based like here in New York and even in Philly, because there were some Philly teams that came up to those too. And it was just like a great opportunity to like almost get excited about the career that I thought I wanted to go after and then eventually did. Um, but yeah, and then at the same time, like while you're a student, don't be afraid to reach out to SJU alum on LinkedIn. That is what it is there for. The worst that could happen is you just don't hear from them. 9 times out of 10, you do though, because I did a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then the next 2 questions are kind of related, but were there some specific communications classes or even other classes that you took here at St. Joe's that maybe stand out to you or like helped you prepare or that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure all of you have probably taken this by now. But it was, I believe, like intro to comm or like comm 201, something like that though. Whatever it was back then. I loved intro to comm because it was such an exciting class to take as like this wide-eyed college kid that was like looking to study communications and like decided that this is the route I wanted to take. Um, but it was one of the first classes I took, and Dr. Hammer was the teacher. I still remember. But it was so eye-opening and gave me a perspective of where a communications degree could take me. And we learned all about like what it is that communications is and how it fits into the media landscape. And it could have changed over, the last however many years. I'm sure it has to a certain extent. But it certainly taught me like a variety of communications practices that I still use to this day. Um, things like dialogue and things like content production and how, exciting content grabs an audience. Yeah, so that was a really exciting class to take. And then I would still say the class that I still use to this day was my ethics and communications class with Dr. Lyons. Don't know if he's still there. Had such an impact on me though. I still think about it almost like on a weekly basis. Specifically the privacy and social networking lessons that we were taught, and how they help me shape decisions and dialogue that I not only make for myself, but my team, my clients, and my company. Yeah, that was a really exciting class that I still, like I said, I still think about it to this day.
That's so good to hear. And you already touched on like clubs as a way to make connections with people. And then I know you worked at her campus, but are there any like experiences that stand out, like service learning, study abroad, experiential learning that helped you prepare outside of classes?
So I didn't have too many, her campus took up quite a lot of my time once I became the editor in chief. So I didn't have the chance to do a whole lot. I did do on campus. That was so much fun. And it was my first internship. It was unpaid, but I got to do it around campus, which was so fun. I was an intern for Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. And so I got to hold events on campus and throughout Philly that I did with two other interns as well. Um, we had such a fun time, kind of just like, especially around this time of year. I always feel like we started like mid-April when it was like warming up and you could almost taste summer. It was getting so close. We would get students to come to the lawn. We would always have like a table set up. We would get students to come to the lawn. We'd be playing Jimmy Buffett music and like, handing out coupons and getting them excited. I feel like we had a wheel at one point where you could spin and get like free sunglasses or a free koozie or something like that. And that was my first marketing experience. And I still look back and like miss those days because it was so easy. It was so much fun. And I was connecting with my peers. Yeah, so that was my first like professional, I guess, marketing experience.
That's amazing. And it was, yeah, not many people can say it was Margaritaville, but that's pretty cool.
That was my first, yeah, that was like my first job, which is so weird to say out loud.
That's amazing. So these questions, I mean, this next question is kind of broad, and I think you've already touched on so much great advice. So feel free to let me know if you are tapped out. But is there any advice that you'd give to students as they're thinking about the job market, like juniors, seniors?
Yeah, of course. Juniors and seniors, if you're interested in, pursuing, a career, whether it's like internships or you're ready to like start your first job, start early and look often is my first advice. And it doesn't even have to be anything like super intense. It could be looking on LinkedIn. It could be just searching Indeed. It could be like kind of anything really broad like that. And, start looking at job descriptions as well, and see where your skills fit into those job descriptions, because that kind of helps you narrow down what you think you want to do, or what you think you'll be good at as well. My first internship that I was paid for was in research, and I took that job on, and I remember reading this job description and everything. I wasn't great at it because research was not my thing, but it was just as valuable because I knew that that was not what I was meant to do, which is completely fine because that is just as valuable as finding what it is that you do want to do. So definitely start your search and network early and as often as you can. And then again, like never be afraid to apply to things or reach out to people. Use your connections, because connections unfortunately really are everything. If people can vouch for you, that carries a lot of weight with HR teams, as well as hiring managers as well who aren't in HR. If you're able to, talk about your skills in a really descriptive way, that's always something that they're looking for. Definitely do your research on the job, do your research on the company. If it's something you're passionate about, definitely show that, convey that. I'm a huge New York Yankees fan, and I was lucky enough to interview with the Yankees, and I had the chance to show them how passionate I was about the New York Yankees. And it did end up in an offer that I unfortunately couldn't take, but like something like that is, people love to see passion and people love to see excitement. So definitely convey that if you can. And then have examples ready too, because recruiters are always looking for examples of, why you were successful in this class or in this role or in this internship. something that you accomplished that you're proud of is always good to have prepared too. Yeah, you can never be too prepared is pretty much how I felt at the end of all of it.
Yeah. And when you say like talk about your skills in a descriptive way, like basically have, experiences you can refer to or like things that you've done, that kind
Yep.
of, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So how, Annie, does your Jesuit education impact how you work and the career decisions you've made?
Oh, I love this question. So back when I was at St. Joe's, I would say the big thing when I was, and I am sure it still is, when I was there was to live the Magus. And back when I was like, 18, 19, 20, that didn't mean, not that it didn't mean anything to me, but I had no idea what that meant. So I had never known what it was like to live greater per se, because I came from my parents' house to college. So I feel like that was something after college that I've really carried with me. I heard it all the time, but I didn't know what it meant. And now that I am, in the working world and have been here for 5 years now, um, I am constantly looking for ways to live greater and to, channel that, whether it's in my personal or my professional life. I feel like St. Joe's really taught me how to, stay aware of what's going on in the world and stay educated, stay curious, be excited about what every day has to bring. And I can say that I definitely do feel that on a day to day. Um, and look, when I say looking for ways to live greater, however you can have a positive impact in your industry or in your role or on your team, a positive impact is everything. And it certainly has made for such a wonderful experience throughout my career, but I would say here at Paramount specifically. Yeah, it's made for some really special relationships, some things that I'm really proud of and things that I've accomplished. Things that if you had told me, 5 years ago when I was graduating that I've worked on, or things that I've had the opportunity to work close to. If I didn't have that mindset, I don't think I would have gotten to this point. So definitely don't be afraid to live greater, for sure.
That's amazing. What a promotional moment. Um, so I feel like, again, we've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but what types of internships do you think students should try to get to prepare them for the job market?
Um, Honestly, and this is gonna sound so ridiculous, but like everything. Like if there is one area that you are particularly interested in, for me, it was marketing. And within marketing, I had no idea what that was. So I was interested in things like PR. I was interested in things like content production. I was interested in things like, any like aspect of like client facing, I was really interested in. But I didn't know that without doing some other ones that I don't like, I wouldn't be able to do now necessarily, like that marketing research internship I mentioned before. That was not my thing, but that is so okay because it gave me such a great backbone for the media landscape as a whole. That one was with iHeartRadio, which I absolutely loved. But it was not for me in terms of like what I wanted to do long term. So I definitely think when you're looking for, when you're looking for those internships for the summer, for the school year, if there is like a key word that you're interested in, look for those internships for sure, because you never know where they can take you.
Exactly. And I also kind of heard from that, like, don't be deterred by the job title
Yeah,
necessarily or the department or area that you might be working in, because even
yeah,
if you come away hating it, like you still learned about that industry or that company or that field.
for sure. Yeah. I
So,
mean, those kind of experiences where, it might not have been for you are just as important as the ones that are for you.
okay. And kind of one of the last questions, can you provide us with interview networking tips? I mean, you already mentioned so much, I feel it's valuable, but any other interview or networking tips that have helped you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely think doing your research is probably the most important aspect when you're interviewing and when you're, or at least preparing for an interview, being ready with, questions to ask the interviewer is always so valuable too. They always say to have like 2 to 3 questions prepared, and that's definitely the case. But things about like the company culture or the DEI conversation are really important too. So definitely doing your research on the company as a whole has benefited me quite a lot in my interviews. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, again, like having examples is another really good tip that I wish I had known sooner. Yeah, I mean, kind of just like being yourself and being curious are the two main things.
That's great. And I think with that, given the time, I think we should probably open it up for questions. So if you have questions, you can type them in the chat. Annie and I were saying, like, I think Annie, you were kind of mentioning you're pretty transparent, so, or open to all kinds of questions. So if it's something you'd rather ask privately, you can feel free to, I think you can message me directly or Kaylee and we can relay them, or feel free to raise your hand and the old fashioned way, you can just say your question.
Yeah, right before all this Zoom stuff.
I know. Raise your yellow emoji hand. Oh, great.
Um,
Like Marlene. Oh yeah, do you want to read it, Kaylee, or was that?
No, you can do
Okay,
it.
great.
Yeah.
So Marlene was asking, how is performance typically measured and reviewed in this role?
That is a really good question. Unfortunately, the short answer is money. It really depends on how much revenue, comes in and how well our team is doing, as well as our clients too. I would say that above all else, like money does talk for sure. But so does teamwork, and so does willingness, and so does, if you're willing to log on early, stay on late, meet with clients that might be a little like they might be new, they might be completely coming from like a completely different I'm trying to think of a way to phrase it, like they might be coming from like a different marketing background. Like just being willing is a really good way, I think, for at least for me to have moved up and on in this role. Paramount is so awesome in that like they want to track how you're doing and they want to see you succeed. And I feel like I've been backed up by not only my boss, but as well as like the rest of my team. My team is always so interested in getting to know each other based on, personally, but also like what our career goals are and stuff. And they want to help us not only excel, but help us get there, which is awesome. So I think communication is also a really, really important factor of my role as well. I hope that answered your question.
Thanks, Annie. And then I have a question that was messaged to me. This asker wonders what kind of content production is involved, which is also kind of one of the questions when you mentioned working with the MLB and connecting with demographics on a local level. I'm not sure if this is what the question refers to, but I was kind of wondering that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So content production in terms of like collecting the information and getting it out there, or yeah, I guess.
I think maybe when you mention content, the question is what kind of content production is involved. So I'm not sure if the question asker has any clarification, but maybe just when you were working, like I think it was Sirius XM, like what kind of content is that? Is that video content or is
Oh,
it?
got you. Yes. So when I was working at BetMGM, it wasn't video content. It was more so like digital ads. So I'm trying to think. Yeah, I worked really closely with a couple of local markets in Pennsylvania, Arizona. We moved over to Louisiana. I was like on my way out at that point, but we were working with the Saints. Yeah, so they were pretty much just like digital ads. So we had the opportunity to connect with a bunch of like, one of them was like a local car dealership, another one was like a pizza place, like kind of cool stuff like that. Anybody who wanted to be connected and could afford it, basically. We worked to put together digital ads and get them up on our BetMGM site as well as for their social networks.
Got it. So it kind of depends on the client and their needs.
Yeah, and their budget as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, budget's a big one.
Scott and class have a question.
Yeah, so we have a question here, Annie. It sounds like as a Yankee fan, maybe you grew up in the New York area, but we've got students who, are not native to New York, but there are a lot of opportunities certainly in the communication field in the city. Can you talk about that transition or just in general, living and working in New York?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I'm born and raised North Jersey. Yes, big Yankee fan, Giants, Rangers, Knicks. I know that's probably not super popular amongst the student body, but that's okay. Yes, I'm so lucky to have been so close to New York City. I've been blessed with a lot of opportunities that I've been able to come in and out and interview in person, check out offices. I've interviewed with a bunch of those companies as well. But when I was down in Philly, I also had the chance to interview with the Philadelphia Eagles. And as a Giants fan, that broke my heart, but that's okay. And then the Flyers as well. So there are so many opportunities though down in Philly and honestly all over the globe. I mean, content is consumed everywhere, every single day. And there's always going to be a need for it too. And there's always going to be markets that, are going to be catered to. So we are currently working on a couple things for the NFL season next year that I cannot disclose. But, have to do with the more recent Super Bowl winners. But again, the recent Super Bowl winners were in the Midwest and there's a huge market out there too. So there are opportunities for this kind of job and this kind of position everywhere you go.
Thank you.
Now, if anyone else has any questions. I had maybe a quick question, Annie. I was wondering, like, it seems like in this industry, there's quite a bit of jargon or like some technical things that you might, and you mentioned learning on the job and you mentioned you're still learning, right? And the industry itself is constantly changing even from year to year, probably even month to month, right? Are there any like podcasts or I don't know if people still read newsletters, but are there any like sources or things that you kind of stay in touch with, or do you just kind of follow along like what what you might get from Paramount's training?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously get a lot from Paramount for sure. We have like a newsletter that goes out, which is honestly super helpful just because like Paramount owns all of the Viacom properties. So everything like Nickelodeon, MTV, BET, VH1, all those, plus a bunch more that I didn't even mention, as well as all of the CBS properties. So, CBS Sports, CBS News, CBS Mornings, all of those. So there's new content being generated every single day. And it can be really difficult to keep up with. So I do have a Paramount specific newsletter that is sent to me on a weekly basis, thank God. But I also have newsletters sent to me as well. So Ad Exchanger is a really big one. Ad Week is a really big one. I'm trying to think of the other ones that I have sent to me. If they're specific to CBS Sports, for example, especially when it was like March Madness a couple weeks ago, or for NFL season. Yeah, those are definitely like really beneficial to receive. And the big thing now that everybody within my industry is talking about is how Google is getting rid of the cookie. So now when you see the cookie, like they ask if that's okay to, accept all the cookies at the bottom or whatever, that's going away soon. So the big thing in my industry has been like, all right, well, how are we going to ethically collect data without being able to use that cookie? So, I feel like there's new news about that all the time. And everybody's always talking about that. Yeah. So IAB Tech Lab is another big one. Yeah, I mean, I'm a newsletter fan because I can read it on the train before I get to the office.
That's a great tip. I've never heard of that, so I'm glad you recommended that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Adweek is a great one to start with too because it is so broad. So if you guys are not subscribing to Adweek, definitely recommend that one. Also start following like all of those on LinkedIn. That's always good too. Yeah.
And we did have another question, Kaylee. Do we have time for one more question or?
Yeah, we have like 2 more minutes. So if we want to wrap up with this question, definitely.
Okay, great. So Nicole asked, do you feel any job opportunities in the entertainment industry were limited without a master's degree?
To be fully transparent, no. I feel like everything I learned at St. Joe's and I was prepared for going into it. I was set and ready to go with the bachelor's. I was even more prepared than some other people who were coming in at the same time. And I feel like St. Joe's really not only like prepared me for everything, but gave me such a great scope of the media landscape. I feel like the comm program is you guys are very in touch with what is going on a day to day here, in the media landscape. I felt so prepared, and I felt honestly over prepared compared to a lot of the other people that I was working with when I first came into this industry.
Wow, that's surprising, but good to hear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and of course, when I was at St. Joe's, I was given a very I felt like the curriculum was such a holistic view, that's why I felt so prepared.
That's amazing. Okay. And with that, it is 2:40. So please join me in thanking Annie for her time today. Obviously, I'm sure she has a busy work day, so we can get back to that. So Annie, we're so grateful for your time. And as we talked about, we hope to see you back on Hawk Hill soon.
Yes, me too. Me too. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining.